right, hello everyone. Welcome to the special Vlogmas series of my Live Talk podcast, the Ivory Tower be Ivorying, the show that talks about the dark, unpolished, secret side of higher education. I'm your host, Dr. V, former college professor turned digital creator and entrepreneur. If you want the Cliff Notes version of how to make a transition in life, check out my complimentary life class at drvernitaglenwhite.com/start-here. In today's episode, we will discuss the ins and outs of an article I read on Inside Higher Education, Scandals in the Ivory Tower. Be sure to listen all the way through to the end. You will hear some great offers and you will be supporting me by boosting my watch time. I would also appreciate your support by hitting those three buttons, the like, the subscribe, and the share if something sparked you to do so. And remember, it is free. Sometimes I do have guests on my Life Talk podcast, and you can watch them on my playlist from Women Who Vibe or from Resume to Reinvention, which is located on my channel. However, in this series, I'll just be talking for Vlogmas. All right, so this Ivory Tower be Ivorying is a special Vlogmas series brought to you by Brilliant Wellness, my e-commerce shop. So let's listen to a message from our sponsors. I got into the e-commerce wellness space when I was working as a college professor for several reasons. I wanted a high-quality way to take care of my body when I was traveling to different conferences, speaking, and doing consultant work. I wasn't always eating or sleeping well, and I knew I couldn't keep this up for long before doing some serious damage to my body. The second reason I got into e-commerce was to be able to share with others who trusted me and valued my opinion. I wanted my friends and family to be healthy and also support the environment with natural products. The final reason I got into social sharing and e-commerce was to earn additional income and to help others do the same. I figured since I bought similar products in the past, why not get paid for using them now? I also wanted to help others find a fun and exciting way to earn additional income by sharing products they were going to use anyway. Through Brilliant Wellness, we offer a variety of clean living wellness products such as liquid collagen, our infamous fat-burning pudding, smart coffee, and all things gut health. Also, a variety of household and self-care products. Many of our products are award-winning, high-quality, plant-based, plant-derived, or as clean as they can possibly be. First-time customers get $10 off their first purchase, and they can also get $10 in Live Clean credits to share the love with someone else. The best value is signing up for Smart Ship to save it up to an extra 15% every month. I love Smart Ship because unlike any other subscriptions, you get a chance to change your order every single month without being stuck with the same products. I can go on and on about these items, but check them out for yourself by visiting drvernitaglenwhite.com/wellness or click the description below and see the show notes for more information. All right, welcome back. Thank you so much for listening and staying tuned to that. So if you did not catch the first video or the second one, doing something a little different for Vlogmas, I am talking about topics in higher education. I do have my notes because I want this to be laid back. So if you see me looking off to the side, I am looking at notes. I just wanted to put that out there. So the topic was Scandals in the Ivory Tower. And I will put the title of the description and who it was written by in the show notes and the description at the bottom. But I won't do the direct links because you need a subscription to read the articles. It's free, so you can sign up if you just really want to, or you'll be able to read like 5 per month if you just really want to read the articles. So I'm not going to go through and read, talk about everything just from the articles. I'll be including my own experience. So in this one, it talks about corruption, fraud, and academic misconduct in higher education. And sometimes I think people forget that these institutions are run by humans, regular people. And not to say that that's an excuse for how they behave, but it is something that happens when you get a large group of people. Now, this isn't just about the young adults, the traditional age college students. Remember, universities are a mixture of all types of people. All you need is the grades to get in, the money to get in, the financial aid to get in, to know somebody who knows somebody to get in. So these people are coming from all over the world, essentially, into this one little spot. So anything can happen. And it's not like they do like all types of deep background checks. I mean, I think they do some checks, but if you are, let's say if your behavior is not necessarily criminal, but it's shady, they don't do checks for shadiness. And how many of us really do have like a double side or triple side to us? Not saying anything criminal, but are you always who you are when you show up at work? Now, you may be that way, but in higher education, it's not always that way. A lot of students go there to find themselves, to rediscover themselves, and whoever they're connected with, that's what comes out in a lot of cases. A lot of professors, they leave lives in other places to go to institutions. It's like, okay, I just can't take it here anymore. I want to create a whole different person. And you really can't do that. You can publish under another name. I mean, of course, you'll be hired by your actual name, but if you started a publishing record as someone else, you can let that ride, and who knows what people are leaving behind. So when you think about, oh my gosh, there's scandals in higher education, absolutely, just like any other major organization. So in this article, they really did talk about the structure and the policies and the politics, but then they really got down to the unfair treatment of faculty during the tenure and promotion process. And I talked about that in some other videos. And then the mistreatment of adjunct faculty. And then it says student athletes and international students. I'll touch on those a little bit. It also talks about non-teaching professional staff, the treatment of them, and then commercial partnerships, sports, and then there's gambling, then there's alcoholic consumption on campus. So I'll touch on a little bit of those because I was a college student before. I've been on college campuses a lot. I really started going on college campuses back in high school because I was part of a program that helped us become acclimated to the college life early on. So I would go like a few weeks of the summer, and it was really cool. So again, undergraduate student, and I took classes to get a couple of degrees on college campuses, and then I was a college professor. So when we talk about adjunct faculty, and they say exploitation of adjunct faculty is like a part-time professor or part-time instructor. They can have a master's degree or they can have a doctorate degree, and they work part-time. And it's not like it's part-time. They could still be teaching like 3 or 4 classes part-time, but they don't get the benefits. They definitely don't get the pay. And they don't have like an office space when they arrive at the university. So if you're a professor there, you get your designated office space that's yours for however long you're there, in and out, whether you teach 1 day a week or 5 days a week. But an adjunct faculty, oh, and then for the most part, you get to teach in your building. I was in 2 different departments, so I would go to the mathematics building and then the education building, or if I was teaching gen ed, it would be like in whatever building the gen ed class was housed in. But for the most part, I pretty stayed in my buildings, had to go upstairs or somewhere on the floor, or like I said, in the mathematics building. But if you're an adjunct faculty, sometimes you're all over the campus, wherever there's a classroom, because the way they set up the rooms is like I don't want to say the tenured professors, but they pretty much get dibs on where they want to teach. It's like, well, I don't want to walk far, so I want all my classes like right here. They can really do that. I don't know if every institution is like that, but I know quite a few of them are like that. And then it goes to, your assistant professors, the ones who are on tenure track. Then it can go down to the like the professors on assignment, or I forgot the name that they call those types of professors. They're not full time, but they're not adjunct either. So it's like, I'll say professor on assignment, and then it goes sprinkles out to adjunct. I will say on one campus that I was on when I was a grad students got preference over adjunct faculty when it was time to teach classes, because technically we were teaching classes for the professor on record. So we were still ranked higher than adjunct faculty. A lot of adjunct faculty at first don't mind because they're like, oh, it's 1 or 2 classes. I'll do this. It's a way to get into the door of the university if you want to go that route. It's a way to get extra money. But when they start piling up your classes and you don't get paid that much, and then you have to deal with all of the things that go on in higher education, it's not fair. And then you're not, I don't want to say you're not allowed, but it's kind of like you're not allowed as an adjunct to come to faculty meetings because it's like you don't, I don't want to say you don't belong here, but it's like you have no sword in this fight or whatever the saying is. So adjunct faculty can be good if you are in it just for, part time, or you want to get your foot in the door. But if you're thinking of this as a long term, way to build income, I know people that have been adjunct faculty at 2 or 3 different schools at a time because they couldn't get full time uh, employment at one institution. So that's just something to think about. Lab assistants, I don't know too much about lab assistants, but I know that a lot of this, especially if you're going to big R1 institutions, I know that a lot of students do the work of those big name professors in those labs, and sometimes they can be treated like indentured servants. You know the word I'm saying, because I'm trying not to say the S word. Sometimes they're not treated as fairly. They work long hours, even though they're only there for a short period of time, or they may be there to get an education. But if you work with a big name professor and they do research, it's like you are like their apprentice. And it could be long hours. Sometimes they may not be on campus. They may have you doing things that the professor really should be doing, but you're not going to open your mouth because, one, it's like probably a coveted spot. Like, people wanted to work with that professor. Two, is a recommendation from this professor could really get your grad career and outside of, like, once you graduate, really on track. And three is like you could just leave and they'll find somebody. So I don't know too much about what lab students do, but I can just imagine one when I was in the lab and we would have the lab TAs, when I was taking like chemistry and things like that, the lab TAs come in, and then just being in the atmosphere of higher education, kind of know what that could be like. Then you have student athletes. I had to teach several student athletes, and it's one of those situations like it's great that the student can have an alternative way to get their education paid for outside of academics, but then it's like they feel indebted to the university. So, and this is just my perspective. I went to school on an academic scholarship. And yes, it was like, okay, I got to make sure I get my grades up, but I really didn't have that pressure like student athletes because I didn't have to go and perform at no brain bowls or no debate teams or things like that to keep my scholarship. It was just really on my academic work in the courses that I was taking. But with student athlete, it's like you have to keep your grades up and you're competing for the university. You're on teams, you want to make sure that you win. So you have to do all the practices and things like that. And we would have to fill out forms, excuse students, work our schedules around student their trainings and their competitions. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I will work with you because I understand like you are on, and a lot of them, the sport is fun for them until it becomes like a job, and they're like, I'm just here so I can just get my school paid for. A lot of them lose interest, especially if it's not a sport that keeps going on after college, like basketball, football, baseball, maybe soccer, something like that. If it's not one of those to where it's like, you get drafted or you can sign a contract, it's like, look, I'm just here for college. Then they just kind of like lose interest, but they still have to do it because it's like, well, how else are you gonna pay for school? So I was like, I understand, but you're here to get an education. And I didn't alter my class schedule, but I did give them like some wiggle room. It's like, look, all of your assignments ahead of time. So let's not act like you can't show up or do the work because you have a game. I was cool with students not coming to class if I knew ahead of time. And a lot of them were really good about, here's my schedule. Can you sign my paper? I have to miss. But then a lot of them also understood, it's like, look, I'll work with you as much as possible, but at the same time, this is not a pass for you. But a lot of professors weren't like that. It was a lot of them was a constant battle of, well, I don't care what your game said. I don't care if your flights were delayed. I don't care this is what is due, this, that, and the other. And then you would have on the sports side, students getting up 4 o'clock in the morning. Some of them were working till midnight because even though they were on scholarship, some of them it was like, well, we were only paying for tuition, but they still had to eat. They still had room and board. They still had to buy books. Sometimes, scholarships don't always mean like full ride. So shout out if anybody's listening, when your child gets a scholarship to the university, you want to go down the checklist and see what it was all included, and then you want to still have additional scholarships coming in so that money is always there. All right. So the student athletes, it can be a lot, and the treatment, some of the coaches are not very nice. Some of the coaches think that some of them are like reliving their glory days or what should have been and what could have been. And then on the other side, you have students who act like they've already arrived, and sometimes they don't take classes seriously. It's like, well, I'm the star, so why should I show up? I ain't have those problems, but a lot of professors did. So, and then, let's not talk about big name schools and how those athletes are treated. And I think they can get paid now, which at first I was like, why should they get paid? Until I started understanding, like, well, they are the reason why people are buying tickets to these games, or people are wearing these college students' jersey numbers and things like that. So I'm not gonna get too deep in that, but can you imagine like how that would be for the athletic department, for the students, and then it's like, the professors, you better pass this student because we need them to play tonight. And oh my gosh, so it's a lot of things that have happened, and we're talking about scandals. I know the adjunct faculty and the lab assistants weren't like so scandalous, but when you get into student athletes, it's like forging grades, forging transcripts, saying that the student came to class and they didn't, professors being threatened by athletic directors and things like that, or higher than the athletic director. And I know that this happens because I've had it happen to me without the student being a student athlete, where people tried to put pressure on me to pass certain students. And then you get to the point like, do I stand up to this, or is it worth my time? And I used to stand up to it, but then I was like, you know what? I really don't care because I got my degree from this different institution. So if these are the people that you want to put out to represent your school, cool, because I'm going to get paid regardless. I'm not saying it's right, but until you're in that position, it's kind of hard. You can't judge a person for what choice that they make, because it's like, if that's their only livelihood, then they're going to go with the flow. Or is it worth my mental health or my physical health? And my physical health was declining because I was like, let me fight for it and stand for it. And I was like, for what? So that's another part of the scandal. When talking about international students, I really don't know too much about what scandal the international students could have other than maybe treatment. Let me see. I'm trying to think of my experience with international students. Yeah, the only thing I can think of is just fair treatment, with their housing. There were certain situations like if they had to go back home, different time frames, they have to go back home. And then if it's before the semester, will the professor allow that and they could still get credit for the class? I had students who would go home over certain breaks, or they had to go home. And if I had an exam and the window would close in our time zone, then I know some professors like, we should have made arrangements, this, that, and the other, and it's no one told you to go at this time, or you should have been back. Those have been conversations. But I tell the students, just open your mouth and say something, don't wait until you get over there and be like, oh, by the way, I'm 12 hours behind. I need to take the exam now. But I make sure the students understood, like, if you communicate, I have no problem, but don't surprise me, because then it does look like you're trying to use it as an excuse. There could be some other things, but I don't know too much about that, so I'm gonna leave it alone. Non-teaching staff, yes, a lot of non-teaching staff do get overlooked, like the administrative secretaries, the counselors, or the advisors, everyone who are not faculty members. Sometimes people forget. It's just like if you're in a K-12 school, the school operates not just with the administration team and the teachers. You have the support staff that's behind you as well: cafeteria workers, custodial workers, bus drivers. paraprofessional teachers, in the K-12 side. So imagine that version in higher education. So it takes a massive team to run a university, and it's not from faculty or the administration. And sometimes they're not treated fairly. They're not included in holiday parties or office parties, or, they're the ones who work year round, 5 days a week on the campus, sometimes on the weekends where sometimes I would only work 1 day a week, 3 days a week at the most. So it can be a lot of unfair treatment, especially with benefits and time, and how some faculty talk to them like they look down on them. Commercial partnerships with sports and gambling. I'm not going to get into that, but you know, you know. And then alcoholic beverages and companies being on campus. It's like, well, do we want a dry campus or is it a wet campus? And then can we really put this out there when all the students aren't 21? But then it's like we have a lot of people who are 21 and above, including faculty. So that can get into some scandalous things like that, because money is always involved. And if you notice, behind a lot of these scandals, the ones I just talked about, it can be money. It's money and power that's behind it. So I'm going to take a quick little break, and this special Vlogmas series is brought to you by the Money is a Vibe membership. And now let's hear a word from our sponsor. We all have some sort of relationship with money. Some love it, some fear it, some hate it, and some enjoy it, while others see it for what it really is, a tool. I've been in each one of these categories before, but now I can say that I know money is a tool that works for me, and I enjoy telling it what to do. However, it hasn't always been this way. I've always been a great saver and budgeter, but when I became a dualpreneur and then later a full-time entrepreneur, I needed to shift how I thought about money. I no longer had a salary to rely on. I had to start seeing myself as a magnet to money, whether it was going back to a job or staying in my own business. I had to unlearn and learn a lot about money in this new space. I am grateful for Dr. Tracy, who has been my business coach and now my secret money mindset whisperer. Yes, a mouthful. We have a tight community, but it would be selfish of me not to share this amazing experience. Dr. Tracy is a living example of how money truly is a vibe. Check out her membership using my affiliate link below. I encourage people to go all in for at least 90 days, and then you get to decide if you want to keep going. But this isn't your average community. Dr. Tracy gives so much practical and energetic knowledge that you can't help but to shift your mindset and your relationship with money. Well, if you're open, of course. Check out the Money Mindset membership, and I can't wait to see you on the other side. For this segment is really, I'm not excusing any type of behavior that goes on in the ivory tower, but sometimes I think society puts educators, so whether that's K-12, but it's definitely in higher education, on this invisible pedestal, and forget, even though it's a lot of brilliant minds that are in these institutions, they are still humans who may not be good people all the time. So if we take the individual for who they are, what they've done, or what they can do, instead of dismissing things, then maybe we wouldn't have as many scandals. Now, this was just the tip of the iceberg. All right. So going down, when I talked about money, I told you money is the root. So I'm going to read some stats about some payouts that certain institutions have had. Now, this is in the article. So it says at Penn State, there was a payout of $237 million. At the University of Michigan, $490 million. At Michigan State, $500 million. At UCLA, $700 million. And at USC, $852 million. So now we're getting into like some deep scandals. These scandals are probably misconduct, sexual harassment, a little deeper than sexual harassment, criminal cases, bad press. A lot of it is damage control. So when I say payouts, I'm not saying that they're paying off victims or paying off students, but a lot of it is damage control. They have to hire lawyers. They have to hire press teams. They have to, it's really lawyers, press, any damages that may have been done. If it is a lawsuit, they have to pay that out. Universities get sued a lot. I could have been in a lawsuit with the university, but it was like, is it worth it? I know someone who And the reason why I know that because what happened to me happened to someone in that same position, well, in a similar position, and they sued the university and won and was able to do some other things at the university. And so faculty, they sue over tenure and promotion process. They sue over discrimination. Students, if students have been hurt on campus, and it's like, could the campus have done something to uh, not let that happen? Sometimes that, things like that. Uh, affairs scandal. I'm thinking of one. Affairs have happened, and it's like you are in this position and you're having an affair with this person. Oh no! And I'm not just saying like you. Well, I was about to say this. I'm not saying you can't have an affair. You shouldn't be having affairs, but I'm saying is when it comes to the people using power, right? So I'm trying not to say too much. If I'm up here in this position and you're in this position, and then I use my power to give like money, accolades, special treatment to you, then it's like you're my insubordinate and I'm giving you special treatment because of our relationship. Then when one of either party doesn't like, and probably usually this one, it's like, oh, I don't want this anymore. Well, yeah, you gave me all the stuff, but now I'm calling like harassment or sexual harassment or whatever the case may be, misconduct, and I'm gonna go blab. It's like, no, don't blab. And it's like, whoa, damage control. So now the university press has to come in, the lawyers have to come in. Then it's like digging through all the stuff. How was it? How did it start? What did you give them? What are they suing for? So much stuff that does happen that way. And so it's like, well, leave your people alone. Right? All these people, it's like, why you got to mess with your coworkers, especially if you're at different levels. It really doesn't happen like that if you're in the same playing field, unless it does become like major harassment. But when it's the hierarchy of the relationships, that's when the damage happens. Another thing that will cause it, people stealing money, right? People hiding money. These universities get large donations, and then maybe the president, provost, somebody on the admin team or in the financial group learn how to finagle the numbers. And I'm not saying they all don't do it, but I'm saying like a lot of them get caught. So then the university has to find a way to pay back that money. All kind of things, but it is money. So these are some schools that had to do some big payouts over time. So not just at once, but just over time, that people that have worked that have caused damage. Student athletes, if they get in trouble, a lot of that is part of the payout. If sometimes if you've heard things, and a lot of times you may not hear these stories, and some of you are maybe listening or watching like, oh my gosh, that's real, that really happens. Yeah, these are called like the invisible costs of the university, because they do so well with damage control. Like universities have amazing PR teams, especially our big ones, and our Ivies have incredible PR teams and lawyers, and like they got a staff on deck. Okay. So the reason why you may not hear a lot of stuff is because they've taken care of it. But I'm here to say that things do happen, and not to put anything on blast, because I'm like, there's, it's smoke and fire in any organization. But I just think it's fun. It's out there in public knowledge, but it's one thing to like suspect it, and then it's another thing to be in the midst, like, oh yeah, that really does happen on a daily. Like, I'm not spilling any secrets, but it really does happen, and I don't think people realize that. So the reason why this is a big deal is because research has been done, articles have been written about the ethical side of universities and how do we keep the moral compass of the university. And there's so many things that they try to put in place, um, you know, try not to look at scandals like, oh, it's always going to happen at the university. It's a byproduct of a large organization. We have to look at accountability and things like that. And, we want to support any victims and things like that. But I say when if it's getting to be too much, now you need to start looking at people beyond their resumes and beyond their friendships. Now we need to start doing some background, not even just background checks, because like I said, you could be criminally spotless, right? Can I say that? Something like that. But it's like your character. Is there a way to really look at people's characters? And here's the thing, I just thought about something during the hiring process when you're supposed to ask for references and check up on people, which a lot of people do not do, or they don't ask the real questions because it's either we need to hurry up and get somebody in here or this is taking too long. Things will come up. I remember I've been on search committees and little scandals have popped up, and it's like, oh snap, that's why you want to leave that university. And so it's like, I mean, I was like, bring her. Because what happened over there, it completely different circumstances. But if you ask the right questions and people have been around long enough in higher education in the ivory tower, things will come up. But it's like you need to start looking at individuals beyond the resume and just because somebody recommended them, beyond their research lines as well. Somebody might be coming in with grants. That's another thing. If I'm coming in already with a $5 million grant attached to me, it's going to be really hard for you to say no to me, even though I may have done some shady stuff at my other institution. Because when it comes to grants, universities can get between 40 and 60% of that money, right? So it's like, if you really do your due diligence and look at these people, that could slow down, that can kind of stop these scandals. And then when things do happen, listen to the people, do your due diligence, and hold people accountable. And that's the thing, like, that's why I started with certain ranks and, positions and things like that, because it's like, well, I'll give you a good talking to, but if you're not holding people accountable, then it's like, oh, I got away with it, I can do it again. So those are just a few things that happen. So much. Let's go ahead and hear this last word from our sponsor. Dear game changer, life changer, mover and shaker, you have the positions, titles, degrees, and status. You've done all the things and you've done pretty well for yourself. You're already good, you're already great. Now it's time to be phenomenal. Are you ready to design a bigger life than you can imagine? Are you ready to embrace a new, better side of yourself? Are you ready to expand what's impossible and live bolder? Well, it's time to activate your untapped superpowers. It's time to cultivate what's already inside of you, and it's time to elevate your potential and possibilities. Welcome to the School of Brilliance with Dr. V, a high-end advice company specializing in life transformation for the powerful professional, the elite entrepreneur, and the overall high achiever. We help you create dynamic and custom life plans, business curriculum, or a combination of both to help you expand and dominate every area of your life. Dr. V's mission is to help you embrace your brilliance and expand your life by operating in your true identity. Learn the best ways to work with Dr. V and her brilliant team by visiting drbernitaglenwhite.com/workwithme or check the description and show notes below. All right, welcome back. So this segment is talking about what can be done, and I'm going to read some things that they said in the article. It says challenges require a more systematic response. Conduct campus conversations about misconduct. Ensure that administration recognizes and responds to red flags and discrimination, abuse, and exploitation. Formulate and enforce policies in areas where discrimination and abuse are common. Take steps to prevent the abuse of grievance process that can undercut academic freedom. So what they were talking about was more so protecting faculty, adjunct faculty, from being fired or not getting the benefits, or protecting students from sexual harassment and other Title IX issues and things that may come up. Those are I didn't talk too much about those because those are the heavy things that do unfortunately happen on campus. Students, the R word, I don't want to say it, but those happen a lot. I don't even think it's domestic violence. Violence does happen a lot on campus. Abuse happens a lot on campus. And it goes both ways. It's not just the students who are in those situations. It's also faculty members who are in that situation. And a lot of times institutions don't take it as seriously when it happens to a faculty member. They do look at student cases, but then they need to have like teams really dedicated. I mean, they do, but it can be so overwhelming because it's a situation where a girl or a guy may say, well, I think this happened, maybe not. And or they may not speak up until months and months later. And then by the time they try to get the evidence or get the story right, it's too much. So that's another thing to make sure the students speak up, but then make sure that the both sides get equal. I'll say both sides get fair treatment to where it's not always just because someone said I've been abused or harmed, then that their word gets taken, forward like is gold, because people lie. And I'm not blaming victims because I've seen both sides. I've seen where students have said, no, this has happened to me. I've been stalked. I've been, you know, um, harassed, or they put their hands on me. And when it's time to do the investigation, it's like, well, we didn't find anything. It's your word against theirs. And it's like, no, if you clearly listen to the student and actually take the time to go through the process, you'll know that they're telling the truth. And then I've been on the other side where students flat out lie. But because they've been so compelling and they've had other people join in, then people have been falsely accused. So when I say put resources in place, you need to invest like serious investigative resources in place. And I don't know if a lot of institutions have, I know they have Title IX office. I know they have campus police, but I don't know if there's a dedicated spot to just really look to investigate. So there's a board you can go through, there's a process, there is due process, but it does take a lot of time and energy. And I think that's why police departments, that's why cases go unsolved, because of the manpower or the woman power or the person power it takes to really go through and watch somebody like, are you lying or you not? So that's one thing. The dark side of that is unfortunate. You got a lot of people, just campus is wide open, and then you have drugs, alcohol, anything else, like people get under the influence. You're on your own. I mean, it's safe, but it's not safe. You're living with strangers for the most part. Anybody can walk on campus, and that's the unfortunate side. That's the quieter side that they try to keep under wraps, especially in the residence halls. When I was an undergrad, I was a resident assistant, and some of the stories that would come to me about, I was just over here in my roommate's room, then her boyfriend came in, or the girlfriend of the ex. It just a lot, fights. Just so much. And this is not to scare anybody from putting their child into the institutions. I think it's a wonderful place. I mean, all joking aside, but it is something that everyone needs to be aware of. And that's what, but then the other part, really understand your rights and the policies. This is for a student if you're going, and this is also for a faculty member. They give these handbooks out for a reason. I would walk around their hand like, oh, well, this said. And I did that when I was a K-12 teacher. This is why they give you the policies. Read them, learn them, know your rights, know what you can say and cannot say, and know how to use the system that's put in place to support you. So that's what I want to say about the scandals. You're probably thinking that I was gonna tell some secrets. I kind of did. I talked about, some affairs that have happened. I've talked about some lawsuits that could have went down. I was involved in some Title IX situations, not me myself, but what I had to witness. The student athletes and, grades and things like that. I've been involved in that. Back in undergrad, like I said, when I was an RA, about student harassment, sexual assault, alcohol abuse, and things like that. Weapons, a little bit. There are some weapons issues that I've come across when I was a professor. See what else? I'm trying to tell you, the ivory tower be ivorying up in there. It's just so much, but scandals do happen, and the institutions, just like any organization, they're going to bail out their people. And if you are on one side and you want to be bailed out for the right reasons, I'm not saying use this for evil, but for the right reasons, understand your rights and understand what's available to support you, because institutions are machines. They're like their own zip codes, their own cities. If you think about that, they're their own cities. That's one way to really think about all of this in terms of a scandal. A university is a city. It's a little mini city. And so just like wherever you are in the city, there are the great, wonderful parts, there are the safe parts, there are the, the exciting things that can happen. But then every city has a dark side, and the Ivory Tower has a dark side. All right, so one of my thoughts about that, I think I pretty much wrapped that up. Just if we really talk about being good people, being ethical, moral people, then a lot of this would go away. But then you have to have the question of, well, what is ethical? What is moral? Especially when you have all types of people coming into your city from their own cities. And then now we have to follow these particular rules. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not saying I have a solution. All of these episodes, I may not have a solution, just wanted to get out there and talk about a few things. All right. All right. So that wraps up our episode. Thank you so much for listening and learning with me. And whether you're beginning your day or ending your day, remember to be well, be empowered, be bold, and be brilliant. Until next time. Bye.